guys. Bit of a mixed, we should call it a potpourri I think today. It's 52 degrees in here. You know, put a thick shirt on. Oh, hands are cold. What a transformation. But we're supposed to get something a bit nicer next week, but this makes a change in terms of not sweating out here. Yeah, this potpourri, little bit of handheld here and there, just one or two things that are planned, one or two things I've just got, and the main thing that I want to do today is concerning my cheapo Rotary table, which tends to want to lift one side when it's under a lot of stress. I'll describe that to you. Somebody else has actually had the same problem, I believe, if I remember. So I'm going to press on and do something with that. Might be a bit of handheld, just looking at odd bits and pieces. The acute sharpening system's still on the back burner. Some of these other jobs I want to get done are either more important or I've just been putting off the acute. It's probably as simple as that. There's a lot of fiddly machining to do yet, so you'll have to be patient for that one. So let's crack on and see what we can do today. In the update category, let's start with this. I've got a new chuck. Pretty expensive. It's a bison, made in Poland. I hadn't realised that. That's the back. We'll come back to that dimension at some point. Now the fixing for the back plate, which is actually for me rather useful, it's a 6-point. That means with transfer screws across I can get a very accurate hole diameter and then radius for drilling a back plate, hopefully. And then, now you probably won't see, well, you can get some idea. You can see it's got the removable chucks on the scroll carriers, as I call them. These are nice jaws. I'm hoping the expense will be worthwhile. But the main thing is I've got to sort out a back plate. Now I did consider using the back plate from my old chuck, but I've been looking around on eBay and I found this heavyweight. Now this is, I realised I wasn't going to get a 1 3/4 6 threaded back plate ready to go, so, and I think, let me just check, I'm trying to remember here, that is 6. Let me just check the bison. The bison is called a 6. Yeah, it's actually just over. So maybe I can't use this. I don't know, let me just check a minute. I was just checking my measurements. This is actually exactly 6. And that's 6 1/4, which I'd forgotten. But I think the distance between the fixing holes here, providing I go rather close to the edge, I don't think I'm going to be able to, I think I'm going to be able to get away with that. Normally the back plate would be the same size or even bigger, but it was all I could find after a lot of looking around. Now this register on here is I got to check again. Just under 5. Yeah, alright, I'm trying to remind myself here. This register is slightly larger than the relief on the back here, so we can turn down for that. It's thick, it's generally a bit thicker than needed, so there's scope here for turning down this side, but the most important thing is this is going to be bored out. Get rid of all that thread and we'll make a press fit boss. Having looked at some of the smaller stuff like 1.5" 8 tapped thread, that didn't quite give me the leeway to bore and recut, so I thought, well, why not just go a lot bigger and have a damn great press fit boss. That is the plan, and that'll probably be a whole video, I expect. Anyway, it's a nice looking chuck. I hope it lives up to its reputation. One other thing, I got a Noga Mini to use on the mill. Beautifully made. I'd like to get the full size one, but as everybody knows who's got these, they're pretty expensive. But this will be nice on the mill. This was a small job the other day, which actually turned out not to be quite so small. I wanted to give this a bit of a service, and long ago, actually about 25 years ago, I made this graduated collar. You can't read the scale on it unless you get super close. But I got this stripped down and I decided to give it a coat of paint, because I plan at some point to just smarten this headstock up. I'm not going to take the whole thing down totally, but I think it would look better with a little bit of fresh paint. That's for later. Anyway, I had fun with this because there's a woodruff key in here, and when I went to reassemble it, the key was not quite catching on the back of this collar. Yes, the graduated collar. And I had a devil's own job getting it out. In the end I did, put in a new key and got it all back together. But it's now quite a bit smoother and ready to go. Now let's get to this rotary table. It's just one of those jobs that's waiting, which I really want to get done. I've taken off the aluminum bar that I've kept on the back for a quick fix in the vise, taken the chuck off, so we're just back to the basic. Now the pivot and angle lock is just here, one side, and whether you've got it set level or in fact if you're up at an intermediate angle, although you can lock it that side, and I've extended the arm on the locking nut, this side is not really quite stable. You can get a very slight movement here, which is not good at all, but bear in mind it's a fairly inexpensive table. So what we're going to try and do here is, let me zoom in just a smidge. What we're going to try and do is 2 or 3 ideas. I thought of machining a block for locking this side, clamping it down, but that wouldn't take care of the angle situation. So I think what we're going to do is we'll drill and tap the casting there. You can see the lines, that's very approximate. We'll drill and tap here. I've got a quarter 20, I'll probably use quarter 20, it'd be adequate, and I'll make 2 pieces. I think we'll have one piece here which is just a piece of bar with 2 holes, and then a turn down a piece as a spacer, That's about a 1/2 inch. And then make a second piece to cope with angles, which would be slotted. Have a slot the whole length so that it can give a locking at any point. Alright, that's the plan. And as you know with me, plans change on the fly, but I think that's the way we're going to go. Get this nice and steady, and I've got to make, at the moment all I've got for centering is this little button, which of course sits down inside the chuck when the chuck goes on. So I need to make a new one of these which comes out much higher, and that'll help for setting up. So fiddly, small stuff, bit to do, see how we get on. Well, I've got to drill a couple of holes in this, which in themselves positionally are fairly empirical, but bit of a squeeze trying to get this in the vise. And I've already had that sitting on 0. There it is. This top here is not terribly true, it's not good enough for indicating on. And this was based on that as a calibration. So I'm going to try and have to use a stub drill. This machine isn't really big enough for something as huge as this, but we'll try it. Right, couldn't show much of the drilling on that. It was all a bit hidden. Anyway, I've got it tapped. This one here I sort of guessed in the casting, and fortunately I was about right. I could go to a 1/2 inch and then it would have broken through. So we got 1/4 in those. So let's get to the lathe in a minute, and we'll turn a spacer piece for there, and then we'll find something here which we can drill, and hopefully that'll do for this position, and then we'll try and find some material to make a longer slotted piece to come all the way up. Just going to make a spacer button, and I just found this little bit of scrap here, so I'm going to use that. Turn down the outside a little bit. I don't want to be quite an inch for the button. Well, that was, it had a hole in it from some other job. So just feel, I think we'll get that spotted and get a bore down it. Just put a bit of extra light on here. Probably doesn't make a huge difference from the camera point of view, but it helps a little. Just putting this 1/4 inch through, go through about 5/8 so I can par it off for a 1/2 inch. This piece happened to be convenient. 1 1/4 inch. Always seems a pity to turn it down, but I hadn't got a short length handy for something. I think 3/4 is what I'm aiming for, more or less. Not critical, functional piece. Right, I don't know whether it is 3/4. I just went purely by the dial. See what we got. 752. It's close enough. I'll set that up and part it off. Try and get some oil on it. Whoops, bit too much. Try that. Okay. So there it is. I mean, it's not hardly very exciting, is it? Just a little spacer button. But I'll just put a little hand chamfer on that end, tidy it up. Okay, what have we got here? I got two pieces. I got a 2-inch piece for short travel, and the other piece is about 4, which is for the longer travel up to 90 degrees tilt. I wanted some 3/4. All I had was 3/4 3/16, and that was really thicker than I need. And I did find, as always, hunt. What have we got? Some 1" by 1/8, which is more desirable, but I don't really want it inch. It would probably do, but I'm just milling this down just to get it down to somewhere close to 3/4. Not taking huge cuts on this little machine, just 25 thou or so. So I've got to go down a fair bit yet, and I'm cheating in as much as putting them both in together, and I've got a squiffy parallel just to pick up on both. So, a few more of them. Won't bore you with those. I've got a carbide 3 flute in here. It's in a fairly old one. I didn't buy it new even, but it's good enough to get this down in size. Saves taking the edge off a high-speed steel one. So once I've got this down to size, we'll get 2 bottom end holes done, and then we'll have to flip them and probably one at a time, and put a 1/4 inch slot in, and then probably round the ends. Right, this is the short piece for general use, and just hopefully this should be the last cut to make my slot. Plus I'm giving my foot operated air blast because of the chips. That should do. Just got some burrs to clean up, and then we'll do the long slot in the other piece. So this is second pass on this one. Should be the last pass on this one. Right, that should do that one, I think. Just finishing off the ends of these, which I wanted to round off. Let's try and sum up on this. So, I mean, the only pieces we've needed was that spacer button and two sliders, which I've nearly finished. Just got to clean up a few more edges, just a little bit. Let's see whether that's maybe too zoomed in, I'm not sure. So those are the slider pieces. The hole on the bottom is very close to the bottom, because this piece here is not terribly thick. Could have made that hole 10th thou higher, I suppose. Anyway, the thing is here, whatever the position, and most of the time it's going to be in this position, you can lock it over here. The scale is fairly accurate, but if you imagine that the locking's there, what is there to stop this corner from trying to lift? And if you've got a cutter that's biting hard, it tries to lift just the merest amount, which is annoying. So we've got holes here in the side plate, bottom plate, and one in the side of the main body. So it's an awkward bugger too. See if it'll sit there. There you are. So the main thing, this one, incidentally, this piece, I didn't do a very good job on that. I did a plunge here for the 1/4 inch start, and I should have left a gap like that one, but I just carried on milling, and at the moment I'm not going to make another one. So what we do is put this one on the bottom. I know it's a slot, but I don't think it's going to prejudice the locking. Then take our spacer button and put that in here. So find the screw hole. Now the idea of making this one slightly longer, in fact it's coming up to here so it's not in the way of anything, but it would allow, if I unlock, it would allow up to, let me see, that would allow up to 20 degrees and still give me a lock. If I do that up and that one up, that should prevent any movement here at all, right? But on occasions where we want to use the full angle, so now with the extended slider, which may in fact, if I've got the chuck on here, it can probably stay put, to be honest. Thinking about it, I made the short one because of possibly needing clearance, anything overlapping the table, but I think most of the time this will have the little chuck on it. So what we've got here with the proper hole in the right place instead of a permanent slot, we can come up to there, which on the scale reads a smidgen more than 90 degrees. So if we were setting it up with an indicator, we've got that little bit of movement. So in the end we'd be locked up both here and on this other side. I'm hoping that will cure the slight problem that I'd had. I think if you saw the video, I think when I was doing the back plate for the chuck, I can't remember now, which was a rather crude procedure. I know I had some problem. No, I think actually it was when I was machining the dog, when I was experimenting with my Z drive, not very successfully, that's what it was. So you got the chuck up here and your work is this far from the pivot point. And that's where the problem arises. That's why we need this extra lock. Alright, so that is more or less a wrap on that. I've still got to make my extended centering pin when I put the chuck on. Oh, one small thing before I quit on this here. If this is visible, hopefully, that is a 4-inch masonry nail. Something we had in England, I guess there must be around here too. Very, very, very hard. And I've ground this one, whether it'll show as a point. I think you might see the point. Do you get the point? That's ground to quite a sharp angle, and it works very well as a prick punch. You can see the point, you can get more accurate, I think. Just a thought, anybody who's got one of these hardened nails. Alright, let's do a quick wrap up. There we are, another small job out of the way. Actually it took a bit longer than I expected, just because of setting up, usual. I always go on about that, don't I? Setting up and marking up. So actually on further thought, seeing as this long one, which gives me the 90-degree locking, I think that can probably stay there, because if we put the chuck back on, the only thing it's going to get in the way of is using a chuck key. So I think it'll work alright. But it's just a rather bitty job. And even just setting this up for drilling, that was a fiddle. I could only just manage that in the mill with a stub drill. If you had a Bridgeport, you wouldn't have a problem. So there we are, guys, just another little thing out of the way. As I keep saying, the acute's on the back burner for now. Let me think, something else. Oh yes, I've got these mister things to try and set up sometime. When I get to that, I don't know. something else in the back of my mind too I've got to get. Oh, well, of course I've got this new chuck. And there's a lot of work to do on the back plate, which, as I showed you earlier, is a little bit smaller, but we can still get the fixing hole circle in place, fortunately. And we've got to set it up, take out the old thread and make a new boss, press fit, and then cut the new thread in that. It's ages actually since I've cut a thread for this spindle. I did do it before. Here are two examples. That's the thread. I think I'd use this as a test piece, but I mean this could actually go in the chuck and take this one, which is the female thread, and this one you might see this actually has a press fit aluminum boss. Forget why I did that, for some reason or other, probably screwed up and had to start again. So I've got a male and female for test purposes, which is possibly going to be very handy. Okay, I digress. I digress again. Alright guys, hopefully see you again fairly soon. We've got some better weather coming. So thanks to subscribers. I keep seeing a few more coming in almost daily, and it's very pleasing. I much appreciate it if you can manage watching this old man. And we'll hopefully see you soon, and thank you for watching. Bye for now.